The discussion of the Global Leaders Series is a series of events that are organized by the Model 9 Nations at NYU. You can find more information on nyumun.org about our future guests. And at this point in time, I would like to please welcome His Excellency Senior Associate Vice President of our university, Mr. Tom Ellett, to deliver the introductory remarks. Vice President, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Tom Ellett, Senior Associate Vice President for Student Affairs, and on behalf of President John Sexton and the entire NYU community, I am pleased to welcome His Excellency, Foreign Minister Al Attiyah, to our university. It's such an honor to have you here with our students today. We are delighted that while he was in town for the United Nations General Assembly, he has made time to visit NYU. And we are especially glad that he is able to speak with NYU's Model United Nations, one of NYU's most globally engaged and dynamic students groups. As a university with broad global reach, NYU is proud to host a number of foreign leaders on campus each year. In this past week alone, we've hosted on our campus the presence of Tanzania, Estonia, Ireland, and Paraguay. And I understand the Model UN will host His Excellency Minister of Foreign Affairs of Libya later this week. Over the last decade, NYU has created what we call the Global Network University. This network of 16 global sites covers 6 continents, including the Middle East, with our liberal arts campus in Abu Dhabi. Our students, who themselves hail from 130 countries, have unparalleled opportunity to engage with different cultures as they study and conduct research throughout NYU's global network. So as distinctly international community, we welcome the chance to hear directly from world leaders, especially those who are engineering real change and progress in their countries. His Excellency Khalid Al Attiyah is one of those leaders. He is a global citizen himself, having earned a bachelor's degree in Saudi Arabia, a law degree in Lebanon, and a master's and doctorate in law in Egypt. Former president of Qatar's National Human Rights Committee and Minister of State for International Cooperation, he is now Qatar's foreign minister. He has held these positions at a time of great transition for Qatar, which has emerged as a major player in world affairs. Over the past several decades, Qatar launched al-Jazeera, successfully won the bid to host the 2022 World Cup and established Education City in Doha. As a valuable partner to the United States, it has been an influential force for stability and progress throughout a period of great upheaval in the Middle East. We are eager to hear His Excellency's views on his country and its role in the region, and are honored that he could be here today. Please join me in warmly welcome His Excellency to NYU.
Thank you very much, Vice President Ellett. And with this, we can start the discussion with the Foreign Minister. So, Your Excellency, again, thank you very much for your time. And we'd like to begin our discussion by first saying that the format of this discussion, the questions that were submitted by all of you present here, have been taken and have been filtered by our UN Initiative ambassadors. So the questions that we are going to ask today were reflected upon the topics that were submitted to us by our distinguished students. So with that, Your Excellency, we'd like to begin with, I think, the most pertinent and recent development in the Middle East, and that is the Russian intervention in Syria. Yesterday.
Before you bombard me,
please.
Let me thank you for having me here, Mr. Elliott, faculty, and student. I'm really honored to be with you today here. I know that he wanted to start to save the time, so go ahead.
Thank you so much.
Fights on.
It's a pleasure, Your Excellency. So, the Russian intervention in Syria. Yesterday we saw that Russia conducted airstrikes in the regions of Homs, Hama, and today in Idlib. And in your interview with Reuters on Monday, you mentioned that the Russian approach to the Syrian crisis is flawed because it doesn't tackle the root of the issue, which you mentioned is President Bashar al-Assad. So in that regard, Your Excellency, what role do you believe Russia today plays in the Syrian crisis, and how would you comment on the recent Russian intervention in Syria?
Thank you. This is a good question. We've been trying with Russia since the beginning of the Syrian crisis in 2011. Russia is a friend to the Arab world from decades, and we're trying to discuss with them through this perspective to encourage them to take the people of Syria side rather than to take the Bashar al-Assad side. Unfortunately, what happened yesterday was dramatic. We know that Russia is taking Bashar al-Assad all the time, but not Russia did not involve directly on the ground. Yesterday they striked, though they claim that they are going against Daesh or ISIL, but the place where they striked is the moderate opposition bases, and some of them are being trained by the United States. We had a meeting today, this morning, with Sergei Lavrov, my counterpart, and we tried to bring his attention to the dangers of this act. Our region is very sensitive now, and by the intervention of Iran and following intervention by Russia, they are dragging a sectarian war, no doubt. And if this happens, it will be catastrophe, because yes, we know that Daesh has an ideology which nobody accepts here, but when someone calls for al-jihad, this would be a big problem, because no matter how good Muslim you are, you have just to be a Muslim to be attracted to this war, and this will be a disaster. Imagine 1.5 billion Muslims, imagine 1% of them are engaging in this war because they consider this is a holy war against the conqueror. And this is what we are trying to convince the Russia to retreat from.
So the Financial Times has reported that Qatar has spent over $3 billion aiding the Syrian rebel forces against the Assad regime, as well as being the primary supplier of arms and ammunition for the rebellion forces. In light of this, do you believe that such support has partially led to the militarization of the Syrian conflict and the current refugee crisis?
Beforehand, we have to believe the Financial Times first. Qatar being with the Syrian people from the beginning of this uprising, we started with trying to convince Bashar al-Assad not to commit what he's doing now, to look after his people, to do some reforms, and we will support him financially to alleviate the standard of the Syrian livelihood. He rejected and he went after his people. Then we have to take care of the people. Only in humanitarian, we have spent, not as much as 3 billion, we have spent, as we speak today, about 1.6 billion, and it's all for humanitarian aid. And this is why, if you have a close look to the refugees which started to reach Europe today, they are only 160 or 150,000, where we've been taking care, we and our neighbors, been taking care of almost 4 million refugees around Syria, in Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan, and 6 million displaced inside Syria. This people has been there for the past 4 years and didn't reach Europe. Someone should ask a question. Why they didn't reach Europe? Because there is someone is taking care of them, trying to keep them on this region. And if we did something, we did humanitarian assistance to keep these people close to Syria, because we know that this middle class are the one who are going to rebuild Syria when the war is over. So we need to check the integrity of the writer in the Financial Times.
Thank you. How does Qatar envision the removal of President Assad from power, and what kind of leader does Syria need during its transition period? And in addition to that, what should the subsequent political process look like?
I think who said his word is the Syrian people. You know, they lost 300,000 up to date. This is the number we know. As I just mentioned, there is 11 million between displaced inside Syria or outside as a refugee. And they have said their word. They want Syria without Bashar al-Assad. And they want Syria according to Geneva I, and Syria to be chosen by the people. They would like to see it a sectarian, a Muslim, democratic, a sectarian according to the French style or British style or American style. This is up to the Syrian people. But for sure, they wouldn't accept anything with Bashar al-Assad. So our understanding has to be what the Syrian people want. We can sit here, discuss all day with all the international players, but in the end of the day, you want to implement any resolution. This resolution you cannot implement on the people until you give them what they want, and they want Bashar out, simply.
Your Excellency, in that regard, there have been accusations leveled against Qatar for supporting some more radical groups within Syria. And in your interview with Al-Arabi TV in August, you mentioned that there are two groups in Syria that Qatar does not support at all, and those are Daesh and Jabhat al-Nusra. So you also mentioned that Jabhat al-Nusra, you called upon them to dissociate from Al-Qaeda. And if that does happen, and we see that the Syrians within Jabhat al-Nusra do dissociate from Al-Qaeda, do you believe that the state of Qatar can, in the future, potentially support Jabhat al-Nusra, given their territorial claims at this point?
It is not only Qatar who are supporting the Syrian who are calling for their freedom and justice. It's a group called the Core Group Friend of Syrians. And this core group, they have an operation room in Turkey and in Jordan, the MOC and the MOM. And this includes our friends and ally in the United States. When I touched on Jabhat al-Nusra in that interview, I meant the Syrian within Jabhat al-Nusra. And if they disengage themselves from Al-Qaeda, they are Syrian. We cannot burn them or bury them. We have to rehabilitate them, because in the end of the day, they have nowhere to go but Syria. This is what I meant when I mentioned them.
And from there, I'd like to close off the Syrian topic by one last question that actually leads us to our next topic, which is the Iranian issue today. How does Iran's support for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has affected Qatar-Iran relations?
Well, Qatar is the neighbor of Iran, and we cannot change this geography. We cannot, unless you have an innovative way to. But Qatar has a good bilateral relation with Iran. We have difference with them, and the difference is Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and Yemen. And this is not a bilateral difference. This is a regional difference with Iran. And we called, called our counterpart in Iran so many times that they have, as we told the Russian, they have to, chase their interest with the Syrian people and not with the Syrian regime. At the end of the day, their relation will be the Syrian people. They didn't listen, unfortunately. They put all their weight in Syria with Bashar al-Assad. They encouraged Hezbollah to be engaged as well. And this is why we have this difference now with Iran on Syria. But in a bilateral relation, they are next door to you. We have shared gas field with them. And, we are trying to separate the difference between the region and Iran in these issues, and between keeping our relation according to the good neighborhood and not to interfere in other internal affairs.
So Qatar's response to the Iran deal has been positive and welcoming. In your opinion, do you think the Iran deal represents a major turning point in the Middle East political landscape?
Qatar, since a long time, was encouraging to reach a peaceful solution with Iran. We always been opposing any, treatment of this file by force. And we are one amongst the first who welcome this outcome. Because 6 countries was behind this file are expert in nuclear. So when we talk about the technical terms and issue of this file, it will be a watertight one because they are all expert in nuclear. It is not the technicality of the agreement which worries us. It is the day after the agreement, verification and inspection. We know that the United States is one of the most advanced in nuclear, so they will make sure no nuclear weapon will be created. But what worries us is, does this agreement will give a longer hand to interfere and meddle in the region? This is the big question. Or it will use this opening to enhance and develop Iran and bring this new generation, to a new era. This is something we cannot predict now. We have to look at closely and watch it from a close distance.
Continuing with the discussion of the nuclear deal in Iran, in an interview with the Associated Press in August, you discussed that after the nuclear deal, there will now be room in order to move on to other topics and work with Iran on other issues. So in your opinion, moving forward in the aftermath of the nuclear deal, what should be the issues that you work with Iran with?
We as Qatar or we as the regional? If it's Qatar, then as I told you, our relation is continuing with Iran. But if we talk about the regional, His Highness the Emir of Qatar and the UNGA has delivered in his speech an invitation for Iran to come and sit with us at the table as a GCC country. And to sit together, we have to be very clear that all the issues should be put on the table and discussed, i.e. the security file, the interference in other countries like Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, and to set a principle where we should obey with, like the good neighborhood relation, not to interfere in other internal affairs, and to discuss about the three UAE islands which been taken by Iran.
In that regard, Your Excellency, with regards to the question of Yemen, so we've known for now that Iran has expressed or at least delivered support to the Houthi rebels in Yemen, and Iran and Qatar, as well as the other Gulf countries, are on the other sides of the aisle with regards to that. How do you view the resolution of the Yemen crisis, specifically now that Iran is open for more cooperation on that issue?
Qatar and the others actually standing by the legitimate government, and the interference of the decisive storm was according to the United Nations Charter, Article 51, if I recall. And this is by the request of the President of Yemen, the legitimate President of Yemen. Then there is a resolution followed, the 2216 resolution by Security Council. And our stand today is that if a mechanism to implement the 2216 is put in place, and Houthi and Ali Abdullah Saleh behind them, the previous president, if they obey to this mechanism, then I think we can reach to a political solution in Yemen. Then if they insist to violate the 2216, then we will have to continue until they obey to this resolution.
So now we'll be moving on to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. So what does Qatar believe should be done in response to Israeli forces occupying the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound?
We condemn this strongly because this is not, this is worse than even the Russian interfering in Syria, because this touch all Muslims, no matter which side you are, and it will be a catastrophic on the world. It's not only on the region, because the mosque, Al-Aqsa and Al-Quds, it's for the Muslims and the Christian, and it's a global issue. It is not, only a regional issue. So we are trying to do whatever we can by putting an international pressure on Israel to retreat. At the same time, we are encouraging the quartet to expedite the peace process talk. There is an Arab initiative on the table since 2003, where we put on we tabled this in Lebanon 2003 by the last King Abdullah of Saudi. This is a good base that we can start for the two-state solution on the border of 6 and Jerusalem is the capital of Palestine. So we wish that Israel listen. Unfortunately, we don't have a partner to come forward and start negotiating. We look everywhere for the other side, and he's not there. Unfortunately, they have short sights. Most of their focus are on their election, and they don't see beyond that. And this is what delaying a peace process between the Arab and the Israelis. If they are positive, I think the first thing they will see that we will engage them to reach to this peace which we all look for.
Continuing with this discussion, in light of the human rights abuses that Qatar has condemned Israel for, how do you reconcile, how does Qatar reconcile its funding of Hamas's operations in the Gaza Strip?
First of all, Qatar does not fund Hamas. There is a story, a good story behind Qatar relation with Hamas, and it goes back to the time of Condoleezza Rice. And it's wise to know, since you